Hello everyone, my name is Benny Smith. I write a column for Star City Games every week about Commander, and you can usually catch me on Saturdays. So today I wanted to do a deck tech on the Commander that I'm planning on playing for Command Fest 2 on the last feature match of the day for the Saturday. Plus, obviously, if anybody wants to uh, build a Radha Heart of Keld commander deck later on. Hopefully this video will give you some cool ideas. So anyway, one of the reasons I really like this card is that it helps manage your land drops, not necessarily interfering with your card draw. Whenever you play a land from the top of your deck, that's one less land that you draw during your turn. So I think that's kind of a cool ability of Radha's. And also, what's really nice is she has a built-in mana sink, and once you're hitting your land drops every turn, for 6 mana, you can boost her power and toughness till the end of the turn. So that can tend to make Radha a pretty potent late game presence. So if you have nothing else to do with all that extra mana, you can always use it to make your commander quite the threat. So anyway, also since Radha is in green and red, you can make use of all of the goodies that are available in that color combination for commander. And you'll see that I have quite a few of them here in this deck. So anyway, I've kind of grouped all of the cards in a way that they're sort of thematically kind of roles that they play in this particular deck. So I'll go over those with you here. So the first group of cards I wanted to go over are cards that basically have to deal with knowing what's on top of your deck. So I've got Natural Selection, Sylvan Library, Vizier of the Menagerie, Call of the Wild, Throes of Chaos, and Red Sun Zenith. So I've been playing Magic since 1994, and there's a card that I've always wanted for my collection, which is Natural Selection, which is basically a worse Brainstorm. And of course, at the time that Natural Selection was available, Blue had Ancestral Recall. So obviously, Natural Selection is much worse than Ancestral Recall. But I mean, that's a huge bar. That's not really necessarily a great thing to compare to Ancestral Recall. You can't even play that in Commander. But Natural Selection was a card that I always kind of wanted, but like I didn't necessarily want to pay the money for it. And so, but being a fan of green, I always kind of wanted one. So recently, Star City Games had a highly played sale on their highly played cards, and I was able to get Natural Selection for quite a bargain. So I was kind of excited about that, especially since Radha Heart of Keld just recently came back, and this is a card that you can sort of shuffle the top cards of your deck around so that you can either make sure that you're drawing a non-land. Since it's an instant, you can do it on someone's end step, so you could shuffle it around to make sure you're not drawing a land during your draw step. You're drawing something sweet you want to play, or if you find that during your main phase, you really need another land drop, you can use it to kind of look at the top 3 cards and put a land on top, and then make sure you get that land drop. So anyway, I was really happy about that. Also, a classic Sylvan Library, which sits out there every turn and kind of lets you sift through the top of your deck. You can pay for life if you want to draw an extra card or keep an extra card during your draw step. And obviously, Sylvan Library is going to be fantastic with Radha. And if you were, as I'm recording this, I just saw the Future of Commander panel on Twitch, where they were talking about the Commander Collection Green. And if you're watching, you'll see that there's a new Sylvan Library that's going to be available, which is pretty awesome. So Sylvan Library is just a great card. It's pretty low on the curve and kind of helps you set up your later games with some better draws. So I'm glad that it's being reprinted to be a little bit more accessible to people. Next up, of course, is Vizier of the Menagerie, which combines with Radha. If you've got both of them on the battlefield, you can play lands from the top of your deck, you can cast creatures from the top of your deck, so you can really get a lot of value with those two combinations together. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that plays out. I also like Call of the Wild, which is a card that I really don't play much in Commander because it's kind of hard to justify spending 4 mana for an enchantment and then 4 mana to activate, and then basically milling the top card into your graveyard if you don't draw anything or if it's not a creature card. But obviously with Radha on the battlefield or Vizier of the Menagerie, you can see what's there, so you can activate it when you know it's going to hit, and then not activate it if you know you're going to miss. Or if you really need to mill off that card because you want to hit something else, you can, kind of use it much more accurately. So I think it's worth a card slot for that reason. Throes of Chaos, I think, is an interesting card in this particular deck, mainly because as you're making land drops from the top of your deck, you could potentially end up with some lands in your hand that are just kind of accumulating there, and you don't necessarily need them offhand, so you can always cash a land in from your hand to retrace this from your graveyard. I like the Cascade ability as a way to sort of reset the top of your deck. Say you've played 1 or 2 lands off the top of your deck already, and then there's a third land on there. You could cast Throes of Chaos to sort of reset the top of your deck, play something with the Cascade, and then have a fresh look at the top of your deck after that. So I think Throes of Chaos is going to be useful, assuming that the game is sort of a slower, grindy game of Commander. And then Red Sun Zenith I kind of like because it's another mana sink for you hitting all your land drops, so you can use it to cast direct damage at a creature or at a player. So the more lands you've hit, the bigger it gets. But what's really nice about this, I think, is that it's a way to shuffle your deck. So like you can cast it. I mean, you could even just cast it for 0 and just shuffle your deck if you need to. So if the top of your deck is not cooperating with Radha, this is a way to sort of shuffle it up and kind of get it going again. So next up are some lands matters kind of cards. Since Radha is going to let you hit your land drops, I thought I'd play some cards that like you playing lands. So I've got Tireless Tracker, Dryad of the Ilsian Grove, Wayward Swordtooth, Mina and Den Wildborn, and then Multani Yavamaya's Avatar. So obviously Tireless Tracker is just a great card, and if you're hitting land drops every turn, you're going to get clues, and then you can cash in clues for more cards. What's particularly nice about Tireless Tracker and Radha is it's a way to clear off a card from the top of your deck. Since you can look at the card, you can see if it's not a land and you're trying to make a land drop, you can sack a clue, draw a card, and maybe the next card is a land that you can play. So I think there's some. I mean, Tireless Tracker is just a good card in general, but in this deck, I think it shines even more. And then Dryad of the Ilsean Grove and Wayward Swordtooth give you some extra land drops, and Dryad lets you play. Any of your lands can be, provide you with any color, so it does a little bit of color fixing. Wayward Swordtooth, of course, is a pretty big threat once you ascend and get the city's blessing. Mina and Den Wildborn, they'll also let you play an additional land each turn. So these three cards will let you, if you get to a land clump on top of your deck, you can kind of pull them off pretty quickly if you have one or more of these cards out. So it's a nice way to kind of make sure that you keep drawing gas. And then, of course, they can return a land to give something trample. So if Radha doesn't have trample, she does have first strike, but if you attack and pump Radha up for all your lands and your opponent has a sapling, then they can easily chump block. So having a Mina and Den Wildborn out there means that you can punch through chump blockers pretty easily. And the land you return to your hand, you can always replay it pretty easily. And then, of course, Multani, Yavimai's Avatar, is a huge threat, and it likes lots of lands, and any lands that you might pitch with the Retrace card that I showed a little while ago can add to its power too. And then, of course, if Multani dies, you can bring it back from the graveyard pretty easily. So I think that's a nice big threat for the deck. All right, Radha has first strike when she attacks, so I figure she likes attacking, and so this could probably be a pretty good aggressive deck. So I wanted to play some cards that accentuate that. So I've added Berserk, the original Radha Heir to Keld, Skullcrack, Obscuring Haze, Grand Warlord Radha, who was the second version of Radha, Questing Beast, Xenagos, God of Revels, Backdraft Hellkite, Quartz Crasher, Embercleave, and also I've got Savage Ventmaw and Hellkite Charger, and I've also a little running out of space here, but I've got Kessig Wolfrun, which you can activate to give a creature trample and +X/+O until the end of the turn. So this is particularly nice because it doesn't boost the backside of a creature, but it's nice with Radha because she has first strike, and hopefully you'll be able to kill whatever chump blockers might jump in the way before they can deal damage back to her. So that's included in here too. So anyway, Berserk obviously is a very powerful card. It doubles the power and gives the creature trample. So potentially, if you activate Radha and give her +X/+X based on your lands, and then for 1 mana double it, that could easily kill somebody with commander damage. And it's also a nice flexible spell as well because you don't have to necessarily target your own creatures. So if an opponent is attacking with a creature and they're attacking someone else, you can use it to sort of punch through extra surprise damage. Say somebody's kind of the arch enemy of the table, and so you can kind of gang up on them if you need to take them out before they can kill everybody. So Radha's nice as a mana elf, but can also get some additional red mana during your attack step if you're attacking with her. Skullcrack is a card that I've been adding in more decks lately. Um, a lot of people play cards that prevent combat damage, and since we're wanting to attack with this deck, I figure Skullcrack is a great way to stop someone from playing Fog or activating a Spike Weaver or something like that to keep you from attacking them. With Skull Clamp, you can basically say, sorry, the damage is coming through. Speaking of those kind of effects, I also am going to go ahead and put in Obscuring Haze, which is kind of a fog effect that you can play for free if you control your commander. But the nice thing about this is that you can use it even during your turn, because it only prevents damage that would be dealt this turn by creatures your opponents control. So if you want to swing in with a whole bunch of creatures and your opponent is thinking they'll be able to block and kill some of your creatures, you can surprise them with Obscuring Haze, and that would be a pretty unpleasant surprise. Grand Warlord Radha can give you some extra mana for each creature that you're attacking with, that you can use during your second main phase, so that can help. If you want to cast something before combat, you can basically kind of recoup your mana with attacking with Grand Warlord Radha. Then there's Questing Beast, which is just a pretty good card overall. It's got a bunch of words on it, a lot of keywords. But the reason why it really makes the cut in this deck is kind of like Skullcrack. This is a way your combat damage that would be dealt by creatures you control can't be prevented. So this, if you've got a Questing Beast out, even if it's not attacking, it still lets all of your other creatures deal combat damage, whether your opponent is trying to prevent it or not. Xenagos, God of Revels. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you can give another creature you control +X/+X, and haste, where X is that creature's power. So this is another way you could do something like activate Radha before combat to give her, say, +6/+6, because you have 6 lands out, so she becomes a 9/9, and then with Xenagos, you can double that and make her 18/18 creature, and come crashing through with a lot of damage. Backdraft Hellkite. Whenever it attacks, you all your instants and sorceries in your graveyard gain flashback until the end of the turn. So, you know, if you've already used Skullcrack and then someone tries to fog again, you can flash that back again from the graveyard. You could cast Berserk again, so you can Berserk and then cast Berserk yet again to really rack up the damage. Quartzwood Crasher is just a pretty large creature, 6/6 trampler for 5. And then if you trample over for damage, either with this or maybe some other ways that you might have to give trample, like Berserk, you can end up with a pretty large green dinosaur beast token with trample when the smoke clears. And speaking of trample, obviously Embercleave can give a creature double strike and trample, so this is another way to really punch through a lot of damage during combat, and hopefully if you've attacked with a few creatures, you can cast this for quite the nice discount. Savage Ventmaw also likes attacking. It gives you green mana that you can, it's kind of like Radha. Grand Warlord Radha gives you some extra mana that you can use during your second main phase if you don't use it during combat. And then Hellkite Charger has flying and haste, and whenever Hellkite Charger attacks, you may pay 7 mana, and if you do, untap all attacking creatures, and after this phase, there's an additional combat phase. So these two cards actually worked well together to give you, like the Ventmaw pays for almost all of that extra mana for another attack step. So if you have Ventmaw and Radha Heir to Keld, you basically can pay that mana and get as many attack steps as you need. So, and don't forget, like, each attack step gives you some more things like Xenagos, triggers. If you're crashing through with trample creatures, you can get some more dinosaurs. So anyway, I think all of these work well together to really put the emphasis on being aggressive with your commander, and not just necessarily sitting back and grinding out value, but actually trying to seal the game. So. All right. Let's see. Next up, I think I will talk about some card draw. So card draw is kind of nice too in this particular deck, because if the top of your deck isn't a land and you haven't made your land drop yet, card draw is one way to sort of reset the top of your deck. So I'm playing a fair number of card draw spells in this combination here. So we've got Skull Clamp and Tome of Legends, which is a great card, especially if you plan on attacking with your commander quite a bit. Llanowar Visionary, Magus of the Wheel, Guardian Project, Harmonize, Zendikar Resurgent, The Great Henge, and Mikokoro, Center of the Sea. All of these are pretty self-explanatory. I mean, they just kind of provide you with some good card draw. A lot of them you would play in other commander decks too. So I don't necessarily think any of these are all that unusually good in this particular deck, other than being able to kind of reset the top of your deck, which is nice. Obviously, Zendikar Resurgent and the Great Henge are very powerful cards, and it's what's nice is each time you cast a creature, you get to draw a card. So like any creature, if you have one of these on the battlefield, any creature you cast lets you sort of reset the top of your deck by drawing a card. So it can kind of chain together a couple triggers. You can clear off the top of your deck, and then you hit a land pocket, so then you play some lands off the top of your deck. It helps just kind of keeping the gas flowing. And then, of course, Mikokoro, Center of the Sea, is a land-based way to draw some cards, which is nice too. I'm also including a fair number of cycling lands, because you are really going to want to hit a lot of land drops off the top of your deck, so I want to make sure that my land count is pretty high. But again, if you are kind of swamped on lands, you can use some of these to just kind of cycle away to draw a little bit more gas. So pretty much got all the cycling lands that provide colored mana in this deck too. All right, so that's the card draw. All right, I've also got some removal in here. All good commander decks should have some sort of removal. So I've got Cindervines, Hull Breach, Ram Through, Reclamation Sage, Beast Within, Krosan Grip, Barrier Breach, Terror of the Peaks, and Blasphemous Act. So all of these are pretty high quality removal options that you're going to want in this color combination. The only thing that I will kind of bring up here, I guess, is like Barrier Breach is a card that I've been playing a lot more lately, and I haven't really seen a whole lot of people play it, but I think it deserves a slot in most green commander decks. There's a lot of really good enchantments out there that can really slow you down or cause people to snowball advantages, like Rhystic Study and Smothering Tithe, and I think having a spell that can handle multiple enchantments at once and not just handle them but exile them is very powerful. And obviously, if you don't really need it, it's a good way to just cycle it away and can reset the top of your library that way. All right, next up I've got some ways to interact with your opponents, some other ways other than removal. So there's Shadow Spear, Soul God Lantern, Scavenging Ooze, Heroic Intervention, Rhythm of the Wild, Burn Away, Scavenging Grounds, Homeward Path, Dust Bowl, and Wasteland. So Shadow Spear is just a fantastic piece of equipment that can pretty much slot in just about any commander deck that has creatures. It's very efficient. 1 mana to cast, 2 mana to equip, and it gives a creature +1/+1 and trample and lifelink. Obviously in this deck we could probably get a ton of life off of this card if we equip it to one of our creatures that gets really large. And then of course the Piece de Resistance is the activated ability, permanent to your opponent's control, lose hexproof and indestructible until the end of turn. So I know a lot of commander decks try to set up a situation where you can't interact with their permanents at all thanks to indestructibility or hexproof. So 1 activation from a Shadow Spear and you punch through all that nonsense. So I've also got some ways of dealing with people's graveyards in here. Soul God Lantern, Scavenging Ooze, Scavenger Grounds, and Burn Away, which is a nice instant speed, kind of a surprise thing that opponents might be surprised to see. So you cast an instant speed, kill a creature. It deals 6 damage, which is not an insignificant amount of damage in Commander, so it can kill a lot of creatures, and then you get to exile their graveyard. So these other forms of graveyard control, people that play graveyard decks can kind of play around them. But Burn Away is a nice surprise to surprise somebody if they think the coast is clear and they're going to try to go off with their graveyard. You can surprise them with that. Heroic Intervention is a great way to save your permanents from mass removal by either giving them a hexproof or indestructible. It's kind of nice. Rhythm of the Wild shuts down counter spells. Also being able to give your non-token creatures Riot, either haste or +1/+1 counter. So if you want to cast a creature and attack with it right away, you have that option. Or if you want to cast a creature and boost it up for more defensive purposes, it covers that base as well. So that's kind of cool. Homeward Path, I thought took a good slot there because you're playing some pretty good threats here, and opponents might try to steal some cards from you with shenanigans. So Homeward Path can basically shut that down with just tapping it. And then Dust Bowl and Wasteland are some ways to deal with problematic lands. Someone's trying to do a symbol, Cavil Coffers, Yawgmoth, or Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth combination to generate a ton of mana. Or maybe they have a Gaia's Cradle, or maybe they have a Maze of Ith and they're stopping you from swinging in with your commander. You can play the land, get rid of that problematic land, and go on with your day. All right, so those are some ways to interact with your opponent's moves. All right, also have just some general good stuff cards here that I've added in here. Got Basilisk Collar, Soulbright Flamekin, Blackblade Reforged, Brash Taunter, and Rekindling Phoenix. So Basilisk Collar is nice because it gives you some lifelink, and also Death Touch is cool. So if you have a blocker with Death Touch, people won't want to necessarily crash into it. And also If you have a creature with trample, Death Touch works really nicely with that, since 1 point of damage is considered lethal. When you have Death Touch, then all the other damage can trample over. So it's a nice little combination with trample, Death Touches. And speaking of trample, Soulbright Flamekin you can activate for 2 to give a creature trample until the end of the turn. Note that you can do that on your opponent's creatures too, so you can play a little politics if you need to. And also, if you happen to have 6 mana available, you can either even use Soulbright Flamekin to basically generate some extra mana. So you can turn 6 mana of any color into 8 red mana. So if you really want to give some creatures trample, you basically recoup all that mana you spent plus 2 extra if that's needed for whatever reason. And then there's Blackblade Reforged, which basically has Radha's activated ability just added to an equipment. So obviously if you attach Blackblade Reforged to Radha, she becomes super scary in a hurry. And then we have Brash Taunter, which is a great new card that is indestructible 1/1 goblin, and whenever it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to another target opponent. And then also for 1 red and 2, you can tap it to have it fight any other creature. So this is a great blocker. You can ping small creatures with it and kill them. But really what's the nice thing is you can choose some huge creature that's on the battlefield, whether it's yours or someone else's, and fight it, and then send that damage directly to someone's life total. So for instance, if you've ramped your Radha up to huge proportions with various things, say you've activated it and you've cast Berserk and you still have some mana left over, you can fight Radha with Brash Taunter, and you can deal a bunch of damage to someone's life total and then have Radha deal damage to someone else's life total. So it's kind of a way to kind of ramp up a big turn for you. And then Rekindling Phoenix is in here as just a way to kind of clog up the skies. We have a lot of green creatures in this deck, not a whole lot of flyers, so I think Rekindling Phoenix is helpful for kind of covering that base. If someone's got a large flyer that's threatening to you, you can always block and then get it back, hopefully during your upkeep. All right, and then we've got mana ramp. So we're playing green, so obviously we have some of the best mana ramp available. We've got Soul Ring, Duraga Tree Speaker, Sakura Tribe Elder, Farseek, Nature's Lore, Rampant Growth, Cultivate, Solemn Simulacrum, Neheb the Eternal, Blighted Woodland, and Castle Garenbrig. So pretty much all of these are what you would expect for green mana ramp. I'm a pretty firm believer if you're playing green, you really don't need signets or like command sphere or things like that. Those are artifacts that could be blown up along the way in the course of a game, whereas green's mana ramp just basically finds a land, puts it onto the battlefield. So those are usually pretty resilient to removal. But what makes them even better in this deck is it's another way to reset the top of your deck. So if you don't like what you see on top when you're playing Radha, you can reset the deck with a lot of these spells and get a fresh look at the top of your deck. So obviously that works also nicely with Sylvan Library. So I mean, they're already great to play in a green deck, but they just get even more value here. Neheb the Eternal is another way to sort of turn a lot of the damage that you're dealing into some extra mana during your second main phase. So like if you want to pump all of your mana into Radha to make her really large, and you smash somebody's life total, you get that much mana back as red mana that you could use to spend for other things. And Blighted Woodland is another land that's really handy here. You can just use it for colorless, and then if you need to ramp, you can sacrifice it, or if you need to reset the top of your deck, sacrifice it, go get 2 basics, put them into the battlefield tapped, and shuffle your library. And then, of course, Castle Garenbrig can give you a whole bunch of green mana that you can use to activate abilities of creatures or cast creature spells. And since we have quite a few forests in this deck, that's probably going to be played, it's going to come into play untapped a lot of the time, so that's nice. Oh, I did want to mention there's the play pattern that you're going to want to follow most of the time when you're playing Radha is you want to play Radha when you can play a land off the top. You don't want to just run Radha out there if you've made your 3rd land drop and then not get any value, because somebody could sweep the board and then Radha dies, or someone kills it because they fear the slow value that you're going to get. So you want to make sure that you wait and play Radha when you still have a land drop available. So that way you get to look at the top of your deck, and if there's land there, you get a little bit of value right away. So what's nice is that Tree Speaker, Sakura Tribe Elder, and these other 2 mana ramp should give you access to 3 mana on turn 2 before you've even played a land. So that way you can go ahead and play Radha, look at the top of your deck, and then hopefully play a land off the top of your deck, and you've gotten some value already. I actually have a Radha deck on Arena Brawl, and there's some pretty good ways to play Radha on turn 3 without having first played a land. So I've seen some other people that play Radha decks on Brawl, and they don't seem to do that too often. They just kind of run Radha out there without, by playing a land from their hand first. And you want to try to avoid that if at all possible, because you want to make sure you maximize the value from Radha. So to round out the deck, I've got a bunch of Gruul mana fixing. There's Command Tower, Rootbound Crag, Firelit Thicket, Raging Ravine, Temple of Abandon, Cinderglade, Stomping Ground, and Gruul Turf. So pretty much what you would expect in a 2-color deck. I would like to point out that Temple of Abandon is extra nice here because it's a way to reset the top of your deck if you need to. And then, of course, like if you play Gruul Turf, you can bounce Temple back to your hand and then replay it to do it again. So it just kind of gives you some extra value there. And then the basic lands, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mountains, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 forests. And so cheated it a little bit towards green because of all the green mana fixing. So if you draw nothing but forests in your opening hand, but you have say Sakura Tribe Elder, you basically are able to fix your colors that way. So whereas if you draw 2 mountains in your opening hand and a colorless source of mana, you're gonna possibly get kind of in a bit of a bind. So that's the way I kind of slanted that a little bit that way. But also you want to make sure you have plenty of green and red mana sources so that you could cast Radha on time. And there you have it. So that is my Radha Heart of Keld deck. If you have any questions on any of the card choices I made or any suggestions of things that I might have forgotten, feel free to leave me a comment and I will answer your questions. And also, just wanted to remind everybody that my name is Benny Smith. I write about Commander for StarCityGames.com, so make sure to come out and read my stuff. And I also have a Twitter account, Blair Witch Green. Follow me over there. You can ask questions, and I love to talk about Commander stuff there, Magic in general. And I think you'll find that I'm pretty interactive with anybody who wants to talk respectfully and smartly about Commander. And lastly, I'm also found, of course, you found this video on YouTube, but I also have a Twitch channel where I stream sometimes too. And that's also as The Complete Commander. You can find me on Twitch as well. So thanks everybody for listening to the Deck Tech, and I hope you enjoyed it. And check back later. I'll have some more Deck Techs too.